At 3 a.m., I watched my HOA president call 911 on me demanding I move out of my own ranch so her autistic son could live there instead. Standing barefoot on my porch watching the red and blue lights flicker against my barn, I remember thinking, this can't be real life. But it was, and it was only the beginning of the most twisted HOA nightmare I've ever faced. My name's Ryan Mitchell, 50 years old, retired welder. I've lived on my uncle's ranch in Riverside County for 15 years. 40 acres of land, some horses, a workshop, peace and quiet. That's all I ever wanted. But then the tax notice came. $8,000 due. My hands, stiff from arthritis, couldn't hold a welding torch anymore, and I had no steady income. I remember sitting at my kitchen table staring at that bill, feeling the walls close in. That's when Tracy Thompson showed up, or as the whole neighborhood knows her, Karen. She came walking up my driveway one afternoon, perfectly dressed, polite smile, clipboard tucked under her arm. Said she was the HOA president. My stomach tightened the moment I heard that. HOAs and I don't mix well. But she spoke with this soft, motherly voice that made me lower my guard. Her son, Kevin, stood behind her 19, quiet twitching fingers, eyes darting around. Tracy said he had severe autism, that he found peace in open spaces. She told me her story, how she'd lost her first child, how Kevin struggled in crowded environments, how they were desperate for a safe place for him to calm down. She even teared up mid-sentence. Maybe he could camp on the far edge of your property, she asked, just for one night. See if it helps. Now, I'm not heartless. I've worked with guys who'd seen hell and come back. I know pain when I see it. So I said yes. I let Kevin pitch a tent down by the fence, thinking I was doing a good thing. That night, I noticed something off. Kevin didn't act like an anxious kid trying to relax. He moved with purpose, checking gates, tying complex knots, looking around like he was surveying. And Tracy. She wasn't watching him, she was watching me. Her phone kept coming up like she was filming or taking pictures. My gut whispered something wasn't right. By the third day, one night had turned into a full campsite, generator, portable toilet string lights between trees. My neighbor Sarah came by and said, "Ryan, that boy's not camping, he's moving in." She was right. When I tried to talk to Tracy about it, she smiled sweetly and said, "Kevin needs this space for his therapy. You can't just kick out a disabled person." Then she called Officer Harris, our local cop. The man showed up in 15 minutes too fast. And when Tracy greeted him by name, I knew they weren't strangers. Officer Harris said camping without proper permits was an issue, but maybe we can process accommodations. Tracy jumped in with words like ADA, therapeutic easement, throwing around legal terms like she'd memorized a script. I felt like I'd stepped into a courtroom I didn't agree to attend. That night I installed security cameras. Old system, but enough. What I saw made my blood run cold. Around 2 a.m., Kevin got up, a flashlight in hand, and walked the entire perimeter of my ranch. He tested every gate, touched every window latch, and paused at my workshop where I keep my welding gear worth thousands. He wasn't wandering aimlessly. He was scouting. And then I saw Tracy earlier that evening walking around with her phone out, murmuring into it. When I zoomed in on the footage, I caught her whispering, "Phase 2 indoor access." My stomach turned. The next morning, my exterior lights were repositioned to create blind spots. When I confronted her, she said, "Kevin's sensitive to bright light, we adjusted it for his comfort." I wanted to scream, but part of me thought maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe she's just clueless, not malicious. Then the email came. Property tax foreclosure notice. 30 days. My last lifeline gone. I remember sitting in the dark asking myself if maybe I'd been wrong about Tracy, if I was just a bitter old man paranoid about losing everything. I almost gave up right there. But then Sarah called. "You need to see this," she said. Her daughter had attended an autism workshop in town. Kevin had given a 20-minute speech, confident, clear, no stimming, no anxiety. Perfect eye contact. I went the next week and saw it myself. The kid spoke like a trained salesman. Tracy was handing out packets with ADA complaint templates and how-to guides for forcing property owners to provide therapy access. It hit me this wasn't therapy. It was a real estate scam. I went home furious, shaking. That's when Sarah sent me the screenshot. Kevin had texted the neighborhood group chat by accident. "Mom, when do we stop this autism thing? I'm tired of pretending." He deleted it seconds later, but too late. Proof. I confronted Tracy in broad daylight. "Your son just admitted it," I said, holding up my phone. She didn't even blink. "People with autism express frustration differently." She snapped, dialing 911 again. "He's disabled, and you're harassing him." Kevin started stimming on command, muttering, "I'm sorry, Mom," as if he'd rehearsed it 100 times. But then he slipped. "You told me to say that." Her face froze. That tiny moment of panic told me everything. The next morning, a certified letter arrived, law firm Reynolds & Associates, accusing me of harassment discrimination and creating a hostile environment for a disabled minor. Damages up to $200,000. Tracy had been documenting everything, building a case to crush me legally. That same week, my insurance premiums spiked. Someone reported that I was running an unlicensed therapeutic facility. Photos I'd never taken were attached to Kevin's tent, the goat, the yard. She'd filed fraudulent claims under my address. That's when I stopped playing defense. I traced her car registration, found out it wasn't registered to Tracy Thompson, but to T. Harris in Riverside County, the same last name as Officer Harris. I dug deeper. T. Harris owned 3 properties and had received payments from shell companies linked to autism programs. I sent everything to an insurance investigator named Ms. Collins. When she called me back, she said, "Mr. Mitchell, you've just stumbled into a fraud ring. Tracy's done this before." A week later, Tracy arrived with a rental truck. 3 men unloaded prefab sheds, concrete slabs, therapy signs. She told neighbors she was opening Kevin's autism therapy garden. She even had fake permits. I thought I'd lost. Until a county truck pulled up and a real inspector stepped out. He looked around, then posted a bright red stop work order. Tracy's smile faltered for the first time. Harris showed up minutes later, pretending to keep the peace. He stood by her side like a bodyguard. I could see his badge trembling in his hand. But Tracy wasn't done. She announced an autism awareness open house that weekend right here on my property. Flyers went out with photos of my ranch, my barn, even my horses. She invited county officials, local media, autism groups, everyone. Her plan was clear: make it public, make it emotional, and make me the villain if I stopped it. I made my own calls. ADA Compliance Office, County Inspector, Insurance Fraud Division. They all agreed to observe the event. Saturday came and my driveway turned into a parking lot. Banners, booths, cameras. Kevin was in full performance mode, smiling, greeting guests, speaking flawlessly. I stayed near the back fence filming. Ms. Collins arrived first, walked straight to Tracy and said, "Show me your insurance documents, Ms. Thompson." Her voice carried. Tracy tried to deflect, claiming the policy was pending approval. Collins shot back, "That's funny, because the policy number you listed belongs to a therapy center 3 counties away." Then the ADA officer recognized Officer Harris. Loudly, "Didn't your sister face fraud charges in Riverside?" Heads turned. Phones came out. You could feel the crowd shift. And then the buildings inspector spoke. "This facility has no foundation permits, no fire clearance, and no sanitation compliance. It's illegal." That's when the sheriff's car rolled up just as my phone timer hit 0. The restraining order I'd filed finally came through. In front of everyone, the sheriff handed Tracy a paper. "Ma'am, you are ordered to vacate this property within 24 hours. Tracy tried to argue, waving her fake documents, shouting about disability discrimination. But Kevin, poor kid, he'd had enough. When she hissed, "Remember your lines, show them your anxiety," he exploded. "I'm not autistic," Mom made me pretend. Silence. Then gasps. Cameras clicking. Reporters shouting questions. Tracy froze, then started ripping papers, smashing her phone on the ground, and ran toward her car. The sign that read, "Autism Therapy Garden," toppled into the mud as rain started to fall. Kevin just stood there drenched, looking like a kid who'd finally woken up from a nightmare. The sheriff stayed until everyone left. The investigators filed their reports. Within 2 weeks, Tracy was charged with disability fraud insurance, fraud property theft, and conspiracy. Officer Harris was suspended and later arrested for bribery. Kevin got community service helping real autistic kids at an actual therapy ranch. I never saw Tracy again, but one afternoon months later, Kevin came back. He handed me a sealed envelope. This explains everything about Mom and your uncle. Inside was my uncle's old will and records showing Tracy had been his home nurse 20 years ago. She'd stolen from him back then, got caught, got cut out of the inheritance. My ranch was the one thing she thought she was owed. 20 years of bitterness turned into this entire scheme. I stood there for a long time holding that envelope, rain dripping off the porch roof. For the first time, the land felt quiet again. Some people don't steal for money. They steal for revenge, and they'll wrap it in pity law or even fake compassion to make it look righteous. But the truth always finds its way out, especially when you've got cameras, neighbors who care, and the courage to fight back.